Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Mr. Vijay here. He is here to talk about technology addiction. I am Anupama Rao from Pran. On behalf of Pran Wellness, I'm here to speak with Vijay Bhaskar, and he has a long line of explanation of the kind of work he does, which is very interesting. We see gadget addiction today. We see the kind of troubles that everybody is going through with that, neurological problems, psychological problems. So we are so delighted to have you here, Mr. Vijay. Welcome to Pran, and thank you for accepting this invitation. So a brief about Mr. Vijay. He has about 23 years of experience in field of design, of strategy, and customer experience. That's really insightful, and he has been dealing with knowledge in design, research, process, product, and people management. And that is something that we always look for. So thank you, Vijay. Thank you for being with us. And I'll let you explain yourself here a little bit more of the kind of work you do.
Thanks so much, Anu. It's a pleasure to be interacting with you, especially in the aspect of technology addiction. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody who is viewing this particular video podcast. I predominantly come from a background of design. When I say design, it's about providing solutions in terms of how do we ensure that people who use various types of technologies are able to use a technology for the purpose for which it has been designed. So that's the area that I predominantly focus on. So as part of my work, I have come across many aspects of behavioral science that is applied to the way in which applications, products, and services are designed by various designers. So the challenge always has been to look at how these things are done in an ethical manner. Because today technology has grown so fast, more faster, much faster than how we have evolved as a species, that our brain is not able to cope up with the speed with which technology is moving forward. So that has caused a lot of addiction towards how we use technology. So as a designer, I try to see how best I can use science to understand the human behavior better and apply the right methods of designing so that we can prevent addiction to a great extent. So that's in brief about what I predominantly do as part of my work.
So, if I can call you Vijay, so in a nutshell, you are telling that you are trying to understand human behavior towards addiction, and you are a little bit on how do you assume that you will be able to. Are you trying to say that you can create modules that can reduce addiction or have healthier habits? What is it that you would be saying?
It's a combination of both, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you look at how there is a huge generation gap, that is in terms of the way in which technology has evolved, especially the younger generation. They are actually born with a device in their hand. So they understand the usage of these mobile devices much better than what the older generation would. At least the older generation, I'm predominantly talking about ex-Geners. So these are people who understand how not to get addicted to a great extent. They have seen the advantage of being in the physical world, talking to other human beings on a one-on-one basis. So their dependency on technology is comparatively less when compared to the new generation, the Generation Z, Generation Y, and Generation Z. They are much more addicted to usage of mobile devices, predominantly mobile devices. So as part of my work, I try and see how best I can make them focus on just the goal of why they are using that particular device and nothing beyond.
Right, right. Yeah, you rightly said the goal to use these devices are somewhere lost because you are not using it for that sole purpose of learning or using the technology for the right reasons. Being having so many distractions on OTT and everything, so everything has been, it's a challenge to keep away your device. I would say it in that manner. Yes, yeah, yeah. Thank you, Vijay. That was very well explained. Yeah, please go ahead and let us know how we want to take this forward.
Okay, so I would want to start by maybe showing a couple of slides which I've put together for this particular session. It's a very high
Okay.
level aspect of what I have seen as technology addiction, and I want to try and see if I can demystify this for the audience today. So let me quickly
Okay.
put up my presentation. So this is uh, a couple of slides that I put together to look into what exactly technology addiction is all about. And
Okay.
the work that I've been doing for the past so many years, and also interacting with other industry experts, what we have narrowed down is the aspect of need. Okay, because as a
Mhm.
species, we have our needs, uh, desires, wants, greeds also. But when it comes to the core aspect of why exactly are we using technology? That's because there is a particular need or task that has to be completed based on a specific goal, and technology makes it very easy to achieve those goals. So,
Mhm.
but over a
If you
period
can
of
be a little bit louder, Vijay, it would be better. So,
need, wants, greed, desire, etc. So, what we realized is that the addiction to technology or the usage of technology is more towards ensuring that their immediate needs are met. But over a period of
Mhm.
time, these needs either become chronic or acute. Okay, so to put
Mhm.
it in simpler terms, chronic is continued dependency in which ultimately leads to addiction, while acute is temporary dependency. So
Mhm.
to contextualize technology, I may use a specific app to book a ticket for going to a movie, and that's it. Once the movie ticket is booked, my temporary dependency is gone. So I'm not
Mhm.
dependent on that particular app anymore. Chronic one is
Mhm.
mainly typically you see so many social media apps that people are
Mhm.
continuously scrolling up to view different posts and waiting for acceptance, waiting for likes, etc. So that
Right.
over a time becomes addiction. So that's
Right.
the aspect of need. So when you actually try and look at the difference between dependency and addiction, so both dependency and addiction would have some kind of a withdrawal symptom, and there is
Mhm.
also some kind of a physical dependence, but addiction goes a few steps above that. Okay, so there is also a psychological dependence when it comes to addiction, and people
Mhm.
predominantly do not feel like stopping. So
Mhm.
you would typically see this behavior where people are looking at their Facebook or Insta or Snapchat for hours together, or they're trying to
Mhm.
make them look better using various filters and which are available in this
Right.
application. And while
Right.
doing this, they also get this positive reinforcement, or what is called
Right.
as the happy hormones get triggered, right? Dopamine, etc.
Right.
So all
Right.
these things can be designed. Okay, so that's where the interesting part is. So using the right kind of cues, etc., we can ensure that there is a release of dopamine by giving those kind of notification or nudges to the people who are using this
Mhm.
application. So that prevents them from
Mhm.
not stopping to use those applications, and they
Mhm.
continue to do that despite whatever consequences are. They will lose out on their sleep, they will be impatient, they're not able to focus on eating or doing the normal day-to-day activities. So that's the
Right.
uh, I would say the major difference between dependency and addiction. And of course,
Right.
uh, to if you look at addiction per se, okay, so there is this aspect of adaptation also. So, as I
Mhm.
was mentioning earlier, the Y geners, predominantly the Z geners, they have
Mhm.
adapted to the changes in the environment. Okay? Yeah. And
Mhm.
the change today is indiscriminate usage of technology. And for them,
Mhm.
that's part of their ecosystem. So they don't see that, okay, using technology is something different than what they would normally do as part of their day-to-day activities. So for them, that is
Mhm.
their environment. They're already adapted to that, while
Mhm.
addiction is more about doing the same thing again and again. But when the environment itself has got
Right.
easy access to these technologies, these devices, we as a species do not try to take it away or differentiate it from what we are doing in a physical world or a non-technology world. So
Mhm.
while designing things, very carefully look at, okay, is this something which is part of their existing environment? Is the device or an application part of the existing environment? So if it is, then the method that we use for limiting the usage of technology is very different. If it is not, if it's only a temporary part of their environment, then it's easy to persuade them to move away from what the indiscriminate use of the technology. And again, when you start looking at addiction, predominantly people talk about substance addiction or addiction towards drugs, alcohol, etc. But when it comes to technology, okay, if we focus more on the process related stuff or the behavioral related stuff. Okay, so we do not focus on the aspect of drug addiction or alcohol addiction, etc., but more in terms of the how the brain works, how the brain gets adapted to a new environment or a new happy reward mechanism. So that's what we predominantly focus on.
Right. If I have to tell you, when we start typing nowadays, even as you type a couple of words, you have these emojis popping up to express what you are typing right there. So it dominates even your language in that manner, I would say. So yeah, I agree with what you say. Yeah, go ahead, Vijay.
Yeah. So when we start looking at types of addiction, we also need to understand what are the different types of adaptation also. So there is this behavioral aspect that we predominantly look at, but there is also this physiological and structural aspect, because the mobile or technology is a physical device. Though we get connected to the internet and we use terminologies like cloud, APIs, and middlewares, etc. So it is still the aspect of the ecosystem of adaptation. So when we try and look at demystifying to solve a particular user goal, we look at all these three things and see which is the one which can easily be controlled, or which is the one where there is maximum vulnerability for the person who is using that particular technology. So these are the things that we look at before we start embarking on the process of understanding how exactly we can meet the goal of the user without actually subjecting them to a probable addiction pathway.
Okay. Okay. So
So
you're telling that all these three factors together, you would say, comes together when you are going to look at any kind of a behavioral change.
yes,
Would you
all
say
these
that?
three factors are very, very important, because you would
Right.
need a physical internet connection, you would need a physical device, you would need a some kind of a privacy to actually use your devices, etc. So that people feel safe. They cannot be like they say, you cannot drive while you're talking on your phone,
Right.
watching your phone, etc.
Right.
So the structural,
Right.
the
Right.
environmental aspect is very, very important. Now,
Right.
as I said, I focus more on the behavioral aspect of it. And when we look at the
Right.
behavioral aspect of addiction, what I've listed on the screen are just some of the things which actually pop out. There are many other subtle behavior addictions, but more in terms of how can this technology, as I said, has become part of the ecosystem. So everybody is dependent on their laptop, their mobile devices. So there is a dependency on that. And there's this aspect of food and eating, gambling, sex, love, work, shopping, debt, and of course, the whole aspect of technology. There are also addictions today, especially when we're talking of metaverse and AR, VR, and all that. It's going to an entirely new level altogether. So, so when we design things, we try and see what exactly is the process that we are trying to address. And though predominantly I have worked on the aspect of work, shopping, debt, technology, and the aspect of codependency. I've not worked extensively on the other areas, so I will focus on the areas that I have worked on.
Right. Sure.
So when we talk about design of addiction, so there's this the interesting aspect of angels and devils. So we use what is called as empathy a lot. Rather, empathy is an overused terminology in the field of design. Of course, you need the right kind of people who understand what empathy actually is, the different types of empathy. Most of the people don't know how to use those empathy, but those who do know how to use empathy, they understand that, okay, there are different reward mechanisms that can easily be created by providing them with the right kind of nudge and notification. So we look
Mhm.
into what is those angels cocktails and what is those devil cocktails. We understand both these things because both these things have to be used depending on the context of what we are trying to design. For example, if it's a
Mhm.
game that we are designing, then we need to create some kind of an adrenaline rush for them to
Mhm.
feel exactly that yes, they're going to lose out on their virtual life or they have to reach a specific goal, etc. So we use
Mhm.
that in such a manner that the player is just about to lose out on their life or the power, etc. And suddenly we make them win, or we provide them options where they can win. So there's a sudden release of dopamine because of that. So it's a
Mhm.
combination. Okay, so we're not looking at angel and devil as opposites, but as complementing each other to see how we can design things to attract people to help them complete their goals. Of course, there are designers who use them unethically as well, so that they hook them on to specific products. Uh, there are many applications which use these both these things in a successful manner.
Right. Yeah, I like the way you put angels and devils and how you said that they actually complement one another. Yes, definitely. It is very interesting the way that you have put across the design of addiction. Um, yeah, that's really good. So you would say that when you design, these are the things that when you design a gadget or you design an app, you would say that these are the things that you will keep in mind, and as you do it, and that's how the customer or the person who's using it, that's how the addiction develops. Is that how you are telling me, Vijay?
Yes, that's exactly how it works. And of course, today, because of what we call as democratization of information, there's information available everywhere. Anybody can search for any kind of a symptom about any topic and they'll get some
Right.
information or the other. And that creates some kind of a bias in people. They feel that they understand the concept better. So you got a lot of designers who do not know the power of the angels and devils perspective that I'm presenting out here. They indiscriminately use it. They may use it without even understanding the impact of that. So that's why you
Right.
find a lot of apps which are very, very addictive, which quickly reach the required popularity, etc. But that also creates maximum addiction as well. So, for example, you would have
Mm.
seen the ban of PUBG, the ban of TikTok, etc.
Right.
In India, right? So it was created for a specific purpose, but that has spiraled into something which is causing a lot of anguish, a lot of physical harm, mental harm to people. So that is
Right.
because of the indiscriminate use of both angel and devils together.
Okay. Okay, interesting. Hmm.
So there's a method to this madness. So one very famous method is known as the hook cycle. So there's a very famous author Neil who came up with who actually put a structure around how do you hook people. So there is always an
Mhm.
initial trigger. Again,
Mhm.
we discussed about need, wants, etc. So here it's about targeting the wants of the person, and then you give them a trigger with the help of a product, which could be a nice music, nice splash screen, availability of a particular service, etc. That would prompt them to get into some kind of an action, and that action would immediately give them some kind of a reward. Okay, so that's
Mhm.
the angel's cocktail that is
Mhm.
being exploited out there. And while they get an immediate thing, they are nudged to invest more time in that. That's why they start
Right.
the aspect of variable rewards. Okay, so they are
Mm.
taken to a certain level and then they are allowed to fail and then they'll try it again till they pass. So they given nudges like that. So each time they fail, it's a devil's cocktail that is leveraged. So they're given that kind of an adrenaline rush. They're given the aspect of sympathy. And so they start talking about it with their friends. And all these people also release those hacks and codes and cheats on the
Mm.
internet so they can get to see how they can cross that particular level, etc. Of course, this is an example
Right.
of gaming perspective. So similar stuff is used in creating addiction in other apps as well. And when all these things are happening, the user tends to invest in terms of time, money. And there are ways in which the user can now buy certain powers or coins in games, or they can get connected with more people on various social media apps. So those are all the investment that the user makes, and that starts
Right.
the cycle again. So this is
Right. Right.
this is known as the hook cycle. It has become very famous. There's a nice book also around that. But again, it has to be used ethically. It has to be used in the right manner, and the people who
Mm.
exploit it. So this is one of those
Right.
famous frameworks. There are many other frameworks. One of the frameworks which I personally use, it's called the bind framework, which is about behavior, instigate, need, desire. So
Mhm.
we can either look at it from top to bottom or bottom to top. So
Mhm.
if you're looking at it from bottom to top, you look at the business, what's the need of the business,
Mhm.
and compare it with the world. Okay, so what is happening in the world? It's that structural aspect that I spoke about in the adaptation context, right?
Mhm.
And then where exactly the business puts in, what is the emotional input that the business wants to engage its customers or users from, and then what is the
Mhm.
need, a problem that the business is trying to solve. Then how do you trigger the user or the customer to invest in that? So that's where we
Mhm.
use what is known as the interaction design. Interaction design is how the user can interact with a particular device, the different ways in which one can do that. And that ultimately results in what is known as the user interface design or the UI design. So that
Mhm.
is the typical pathway that many designers take. Or we can also break down a behavior to what is the trigger or stimuli, what is the need that is causing that particular behavior, and
Mhm.
what is the underlying desire also. So it works both ways, both in a positive and negative manner. So my focus has always been to ensure that designers are ethical. They understand the positivities and the negativities of using those kind of frameworks and models.
Mhm. So in short, you have, people have, there are ways of doing it ethically, and then it is being misused also by some people, is what you would say.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So continuing with that,
Interesting. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. It's very interesting the way you put it across. Yeah. Go ahead.
so again, why as I was mentioning, technology changes are faster than evolution of our species. So uh,
Mhm.
again, it's exploitation of how the function of a brain is. Okay, our brain is very elastic. It can easily adapt anything. It's only looking at shortcuts or heuristics as we call it. So whatever is easy for the brain to adapt and then move forward, and they're getting some kind of a reward in terms of dopamine or any other endorphin, and then they get very excited to go out and repeat the same task again and again. And again, technology has ensured that we focus on more of greed than need nowadays.
Right.
So we have gone beyond
Right.
greed and desire. We are focusing more on the aspect of greed, and with technology, I
Right.
think it's very easy.
I would add here, Vijay. I would just say nowadays you don't need to even type. Yeah, earlier in my days I had to write. Then it came to the time where I had to type, and now it is that I could just speak a sentence and it gets typed. So how much more can you get yourself hooked to a gadget? It is so much more simpler. It just makes you more addicted to it. At the same time, it is not giving you the uh, right essential need for what you are actually doing. So it's I would say these technologies today that are coming, like you said, it is unavoidable. We need this technology, but we need to use them in the right manner to the best of our benefit, rather than get addicted and use it for the wrong reasons, or for the unhealthy habits that we can get adapted to.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, very true, very true. And that's why it's
Yeah.
very important that we look into the ethics of design. This is
Right.
a huge concern that we have as a design community because there is a lack of proper design education. Though there are a lot of institutes out there like IITs and IDs, like some great universities across the world which actually focus on design. And there is also a chapter for ethics in design, but it is
Hmm.
just brushed under the carpet because there is a lot more
Right.
value that businesses offer to be somewhere unethical to ensure that their business is better than their competitors. So that
Right.
creates some kind of a I would say, a hook again for the designer to cross those lines, and they start creating applications or processes which impact, or which further trickles down to creating those addictions. So,
Right.
so that those unethical reward mechanisms are the ones which prompts designers. And the other aspect is, of course, democratization of data. Data is available everywhere and anywhere. You see, there's a sudden surge in the number of startups which have come up in different areas. That's because of data being available. As technology moves forward, data creation of data becomes much more rampant. That means that people have more access to data, and this data includes how we behave, what we choose, what we don't choose. So everything becomes important, and we can create some very dangerous addictions based on those things.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah,
that
because I guess, like you rightly said, with so many startups, there are so many youngsters who think that don't need, if they have an idea, they don't need an education at all. They think that, an idea is enough for them to take it forward. And when they reach out to the gadgets, they have so many information, like you said, ethical and unethical information that's needed and not needed too. So I would just say, like you said, it's a cocktail of different things put together, and it is definitely challenging. And as you are presenting this, I could just understand from a creative mindset what you are trying to achieve here in this, rigmarole of life, how we are going around in circles trying to find our answers to the queries that we have. Yeah, go ahead, Vijay. It's very interesting the way you would just say, from your point of view, how you see these things.
Yeah, so that brings me the question of what should designers do? So
Yeah,
these are the ones who are actually helping create those things, right? So they
right,
should have a strong ethical background. Okay? So without that,
right,
uh, designers should not even be given the work. It's as
right,
dangerous as asking somebody to cut open a person or operate without having the requisite
right,
education background, practice, etc. So,
right.
so that is very important, that there should be some kind of a structure around that. And
Mm-hmm,
of course, the environment has to be much more human focused. That is, as a designer, I should interact more with people. My community should interact more with people, not just with technology. They should actually get
mm-hmm,
down to the bare minimum of, okay, why exactly is the person not using a specific a payment method? What is stopping them from using a payment method? What is stopping them from not getting off their devices, etc.? So that
mm-hmm.
understanding is very important. The other key aspect is very few designers focus on how exactly biases work. Okay, so they think that, okay, bias is something you just read about it and you know what it is, but biases are much, much, much deeper. The designers don't spend enough time to understand biases and how it impacts the way in which they design solutions. So
Mm-hmm.
this is what I would recommend the designers to do. And the other thing is, yes, once these apps are designed, so what are the things that parents or concerned people look for in tech
Mm-hmm.
addicts, right? So that becomes a key question. So this is what I see as things which parents or people who are concerned about folks who are already addicted to tech should look at. And
Mm-hmm.
predominantly, these people will be isolating themselves. They'll always be in their own world. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, we know that their own world means it's with a device. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
they're always with some kind of a virtual friend or a mate with whom they're conversing, etc. The tricky thing is
Mm-hmm.
we don't even know whether that person is real or it's just a bot. Today, technology has advanced so much that you've got artificial
Right,
intelligence that can mimic that. Okay, they are responding as human beings, etc. The other thing
right,
is depression in people who are addicted to technology. So whenever there's an internet outage or when there's no electricity, when the device is not charged, they actually get into depression or psychosis.
withdrawal symptoms. Yeah, withdrawal symptom.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's where the we see parallels between substance addiction and then technology addiction. So there is also a significant withdrawals in symptoms out here, and out
Yeah.
here we have seen cases where I would say not a very large amount, but there are significant amount of people who get into psychosis, hostility, etc. And they also have
Right.
impulse control problems. So these are things that
Right.
parents are concerned, adults can look at in
I would
technology.
definitely add it there and say, when you say psychosis, I would say there's a lot of hallucination, there's delusion. You are, although, the technology, there are creative aspects to it, but then there is a huge amount of delusion too. When we have these kind of, the gadgets that they can create in your mind. I would just say that, yeah. Hostility, you would say, what would you mean when you say hostility, getting defensive and angry? Well, what are you trying to say here, Vijay?
It's a combination of both. It could be the way in which they behave when they are in a social group. They would
Uh-huh.
get away from the social group at all costs. So for that, they don't mind creating any kind of a rift or getting sympathy or getting kind of attention just to ensure that
Mhm.
they're away from the group so they can get back to their devices. Or they may show very aggressive behavior like breaking things or destroying things. So these are extreme cases, of course, but these are known to happen. You would have seen examples in let's say cricket matches, and especially what the gambling or sports addiction, where people have gotten up and then broken the TV sets, etc. Right? So
Right,
so into it that they cannot see that they're not getting their angel cocktail to them, so they just go ahead and then break the equipment. So those are all some of those things which that we see when it comes to
right,
ethics.
right. What do you mean by impulse control problems? Unable to stop using technology and device. So, would you say that, what do you mean by impulse control problems?
It's more like what's the first thing that we reach out to when we get up, right? So today it's the mobile device. It's become part of the day-to-day activity. Uh, 10 years ago, it was more like getting up, finishing our morning rituals, and maybe relaxing, reading the newspaper, or sipping a cup of tea or coffee with your loved ones, etc. Today, it has changed. There is also the aspect of you will see people suddenly they'll reach out to their pocket to check whether they got their mobile device or not. It's become much more valuable than anything else. Um, uh,
Right. I can see, I would definitely relate to what you say because, you suddenly find people desperately looking for their phone, which is more important to them as they leave their premises or residence or any place. That becomes the most valuable thing that they have a connection to. They feel they have a connection to the world through that device alone. Yeah. So yes, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, so this is some of the, I would say, smaller examples. There are other examples as well. For example, you got the aspect of obsessive control disorder, right? So, you need, let us,
What
years
is that,
ago,
Vijay?
OC,
Sorry
obsess,
to interrupt you. I couldn't hear it. Yeah.
obsessive control disorder, OCDs.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
years ago, it was more towards how people have got OCD against the environment or the way in which they travel or how they travel, etc. Today, it's about using technology. Okay, so they are really obsessed about that being part of wherever they go. So,
Right.
reach to that
Right.
level of obsessiveness.
Right. Yeah, because nowadays with everybody having uh, you know some kind of a gadget for them to listen to. They have their mic all fixed up. So you rather find that there are so many physiological problems because of these things. Having earplugs or earpods or whatever that you call it today in different manners that you have. So there's a lot of physiological problems to these things also, not only psychological.
Yes, exactly. So that brings me to the next slide, which is talking about, okay, how do you reduce the dependency on technology? So
Okay.
there is no, I would say, an easy path or a shortcut to this, because adaptation towards technology is not something that happens just like that. It also takes
Right.
time. It takes significant
Right.
amount of time. Only thing is, we are not perceptive of the time that takes. We feel that it's so good that it just happens like that, but there's a
Right.
history behind it. There's time that people have invested. as part of the hook cycle that I was talking earlier, there's a significant investment of time, effort, etc., to get addicted to something. So it's very important to understand what are those physical activities and digital activities. How can we establish a balance around them? And there could be other ways in which where you can switch off the internet on the phone. So use the phone as a phone. The purpose, the intent of the phone was to talk to people, not the smartness of it. Yeah, at least with time you can turn off the smartness of the device, so it just remains as a phone. Then you can use technology to limit the usage of technology. There are a lot of apps out there which will block you from using certain features, etc. So that can be leveraged to a great extent. So it is taking those small steps. Okay, so you need to take small steps. There is no point in taking large steps and then falling back into the withdrawal symptoms, etc. It has to be small steps, just like any other addiction. And other quick thing is disable notifications. Most of the notifications are more to nudge them to continue to use their technology or use the particular device. That can be reduced or removed completely. And again, we need to teach people what is priority. So while eating, eating is priority. While sleeping, sleeping is priority. While talking to other person, the other person with whom they're talking is the priority. So at that time, those mobile device should not be allowed at all. For example, in meeting rooms, why do you need the mobile phone? You are there for a particular purpose. So you should keep the mobile phones away from meeting rooms, from cinema halls, from those places, so that just like what they do in many of the religious places, they ask you to keep your mobile phone away, right? So it is a simple trigger to, hey, you come here for a purpose, finish that and then go. You can always use your technology later, right?
Thank you once again, Vijay. Go ahead. As I was telling you on your latest slide, I would just say I had a friend who's a cardiologist, and he told me that Anu, I'm not part of WhatsApp. So if you need to reach me, you need to call me, and this is the small phone that I have, which is only meant for me to have a conversation. Otherwise, you could just reach out to my office and they will get in touch with me. So I would just say there are still people who are not addicted to these kind of devices and they find it very distracting. The other day I had met a student who has disabled her WhatsApp on her phone because she finds it that it is very distracting and she's always going back to checking messages or checking something on Instagram and things like that. So she said, I have to, she's writing her NEET exam and she said, this is highly distracting to me. So ma'am, I have disabled so many apps. So yes, like the way you say, you can disable apps, you can remove apps. And like you said, like any addiction, like it is smoking or any other substance abuse, this is also a kind of addiction. And I think taking small steps at a time, like keeping away a gadget for half an hour, keeping away a gadget for overnight, or these are small steps that you can take to keep away from this. And I think rewarding yourself that you have done that would be a reinforcement for them to continue to have those kind of follow those kind of positive behaviors.
Absolutely right. In fact, I myself have dedicated focus time every day between 1 and 3. I don't look at any devices. So it's as part of my calendar. So I just focus on the work that I have to do and nothing else. And as a ritual, I ensure that on my, especially on my birthday, I'm completely off all digital gadgets. So I have my own ways of dealing with it. So it's important that every person is nudged to come up with their own way of dealing with addiction. I would not want to call it addiction, more like reducing the dependency on the usage of technology. That's very, very important. And I would also highly recommend that this becomes part of the education curriculum of young kids, so that right from a young age, they are taught how not to get addicted to these devices.
Right.
So that brings me to this is my last slide. So so that's all I have to share and talk about the addiction of technology.
Yeah. Thank you, Vijay. Thank you so much. We are delighted to have had you here with us at Pran. And we look at people who design apps and design so many modules on the computer, and you coming from the creative side of it, having someone like you who is trying to be conscious about it, and like how you said, there is a cocktail of angel and evil both put together, and let's hope that there'll be a lot more creative directors like you who will bring in more conscious kind of access to these apps. And yeah, thank you so much, Vijay. That was very insightful, and I'm sure our viewers will have a good insight into these cocktails that you have mentioned here. Thank you once again.
Thanks so much, and it was a pleasure interacting with you.
Yeah, thank you. And to everyone here, we say here goodbye and see you all next time in our next webinar. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.